welcome back programmers in the second video of Werkzeug series. In this video we are going to getting started with Werkzeug, and for that I just created one folder named Werkzeug, and in this folder we are going to create a new file first day py. So as you can see I am creating day 1 named Python file, and in this file we are going to getting started with Werkzeug. Now before starting this video, I wanna suggest you just check out the Werkzeug official documentation, link is in the description. And if you don't know what is Werkzeug and if you are not familiar with WSGI applications, so check out my first video, link is in the description too. And remember, in this series we are going to complete the e-commerce website using the Werkzeug. So please subscribe my YouTube channel and hit on the bell icon so you'll never miss my latest video of this series. So let's start with the basic WSGI introductions. So basically Werkzeug is a utility library for WSGI. WSGI itself is a protocol or a convention that ensures that your web application can speak with the web server, and more importantly that web applications work nicely together. So in this video we are going to getting started with the Hello World application in WSGI without the help of Werkzeug. Looks like this. So let's begin. Now if you forgot to install Werkzeug, so this is the code pip install Werkzeug, and official PyPy link is in the description. So I'm just gonna go in my terminal and install the Werkzeug. So just write pip install Werkzeug and hit enter. But if you are using Django or Flash, so it will automatically installed in your Werkzeug. So as you can see, this is my first program, Hello AIOC, using the print keyword. Now in here I just use the print hello world AIOC to just run this compiler. So let's run this day 1 program. So as you can see my compiler is perfect and it's perfectly running. I know I got 3 processes running in the background, but I am not able to get any error using this Python exe compiler, which is in the Werkzeug day1.py. So in a simple way we can start creating Werkzeug application. So let's begin. Now this is the Hello World AIOC program for print statement, but we are going to use the Werkzeug for Hello World. So let's start. Now the request data takes the environment object and allows you to access the data from the environment in a nice manner. It means the response object is a WSGI application itself and provide a much nicer way to create a response. Now if you are familiar with the Django concept and the Flash concept, it's nothing but the send data with the use of response. So we are going to do the same method with here. So let's create a basic Hello World application WSGI without the help of Werkzeug. And for that first we are going to create a function. Let's name it AIOC hello. And in this function we are going to take 2 main arguments, which is nothing but the environment and the response. As you can see, this is the environment and the start response, or you can just name it response. Now we are going to use this response to send the data from backend to frontend, and for that just basically use the response of the first argument is the warning, which is nothing but the 200. Okay, now if you are familiar with the Django REST framework, you know how this thing works. This is nothing but the error code, or you can say code for every warning and error, and if this is the 200 it means it's okay, perfectly fine. Now the second argument is the list with the tuple. In here we are going to plan or text format. Now because this is the Hello World program, we just need to respond the simple plain text, and for that content type equal to text plain. Now if you are wondering that how we can respond the, so you can do it in here too, but for now we are going to simply return the hello AIOC. So let's write hello AIOC, and that's it. This is our simple Hello AIOC program using the WSGI application without the Werkzeug. Now a WSGI application is something you can call and pass an environment dict and a start response callable. Now the environment contains all incoming information. The start response function can be used to indicate the start the response obviously. With the Werkzeug you don't have to deal directly with either, as request and the response object are provided to work with them. The request data takes the environment object and allows you to access the data from the environment in the nice manner. The response object is a WSGI application in itself and provides a much nicer way to create response. So we are going to create Werkzeug response, but for now this was our simple WSGI hello world. If you run this program, you will not get any error because this is perfectly fine, but if you really wanna run it, you have to use the redis server and you have to pass this response as something. Now we are going to use the werkzeug.wrapper import response to response the actual server, and for that you can directly use the response and replace that response with this response. So simply just go on here and import the response from werkzeug.wrappers import response. Now I know this all is confusion for you, but remember me, at the end of this video you will understand how this thing works. So as you can see how these things work. In here, whenever system sends something to the web page, it will use the response. Now response can be anything, HTTP response, render, anything. And in return, sometime web application can return us something such as get and post request, and that's why if you know Django, we use the request as the argument if we got anything from the web page, and that is why we use the system to send something to web applications using the response, and we use the get and post or any request from web application to get any request from web application. Now in here we are using this response to send something, text or render or HTML or anything to front end, and for that we are going to use the from werkzeug.wrappers import response. I hope you'd understand this how this work. So in here we are going to replace this response with this response, which is nothing but the inbuilt library, and we are going to store this response in response variable. Now in here we don't need to pass any system code or any content type. You can directly use the whatever text you wanna send, let's say hello AIOC, and you can declare the meme type, which is nothing but the simple text, and for that just write meme type equal to text plain, which is same as the content type. Now in here we are getting the response. I'm gonna change this response because it will confuse this variable with this variable. So I'm gonna name it request, or you can name it start response, and in this here I'm gonna return the response, which is nothing but this response, and I'm simply gonna I'm gonna pass this envar and the request in here. As you can see, environment and the request. Now if you know Django, we are using this request to send the request data, which is the same in here. We are sending the request in the return format, and here an expanded version that looks at the query string in the URL. More importantly, at the name parameter in the URL to substitute world again another world. You can use this code to do that. Okay, so before we get started, let's create the folder needed for this application. We are going to use the static and templates. Now if you don't know Django, static is nothing but all resources files and other files like images, JavaScript, CSS and so on. And in the templates we are going to store the HTML file, which is main HTML file. So let's create a folder in here. I'm gonna name it obviously templates and static. Directly into this folder we will put our main modules in the following step. The file inside the static folder are available to users of the application via HTTP. This is the place where we use the CSS and JavaScript file to go. Inside the template folder we will make Jinja 2 looks for templates. The templates you create later in the tutorials, we will go to this directly. It means in simple way we are going to store main HTML file, or you can say index.html in the templates, and we are going to store CSS, JavaScript, image and any other file in the static. Okay, so now let's get to the right into and create a module for our applications. Let's create a file called day1.py in the py folder. In the Werkzeug folder, at first we will need a bunch of imports. I will put in all imports here even if they are not used right away to keep it from being confusing. So in here, just go on here and import all of this stuff. The first one is obviously response. The second one is OS, which is nothing but the operating system. The third one is import redis. Now this is important one. Redis is nothing but the server. You can search redis to know more about it, redis, but we are going to talk about in later about deeply in this redis server. The third one is Werkzeug.url, import URL parser. If you don't know, Django URL parser is nothing but to create a particular URL for particular page. Let's use the example of Amazon. Let's say if you choose any mobile, let's say MIA3, so it will go on that particular URL amazon.com/MIA3, and that is why we are going to use this URL parser. The fourth one is from Werkzeug.wrapper, import request response. You know how this thing work. And then we got Werkzeug.routing, import map and rule. This is we are going to use for map or URLs. The next one is HTTP exception and not found. This is nothing but the error handling and the HTTP exceptions. And then we got middleware. If you don't know Django, middleware is nothing but the data application where we are going to store our middlewares. We are going to talk more about this, all of this in the later video. And then we got redirect. Let's say if you wanna redirect to that particular page or that particular URL, you can use this redirect. If you know Django, you know how the redirect work. And then we got Jinja 2. From Jinja 2, import environment and file system loader. It means we are going to use the environment for Jinja 2, which is we are going to store in templates and file system loader. So we can load our templates and static files. Then we can create the basic structure for our application and function to create a new instance of it, optionally with a piece of WSGI middleware that export all of the file on the static folder on the web. Now I highly suggest you to install the Redis server. So just write pip install Redis, or link is in the description. You can check out the official Redis website and the code is in the description, pip install Redis. So let's create our hello world application and create a website, a web page. Let's create our first hello world in the web server using the Werkzeug. So let's create a class. You can name it anything. I'm gonna name it AIOC first. Now in here we are going to use the constructor. Now if you don't know basic concept of Python, so just check out my previous Python series. We are going to create an init function to initialize the Redis server, and for that I'm going to pass the configuration in here to pass the config variable, and then I'm going to use the self keyword to initialize the Redis variable. So just write self.redis equal to redis.redis, which is nothing but the import part. As you can see in here, we just imported the Redis. As you can see, import Redis, and we are going to use that redis.redis. We are going to use the configuration, which is nothing but the Redis host, Redis port. Now host is nothing but your local host. We are going to use the local host for now, and we are going to pass the local host port. In a simple way, with the use of this line, we are going to create an server. If you know Django, we use the Django start app and Django python manage.py run server. This is the same as that, but we have to create our own function in here. So whenever we create the object of this class, it will automatically create an server and it will start in that particular server which pass. Now we are going to send some data to front end. Now that we created the server between web page and our backend, let's use the data. We are going to pass the simple data, which is nothing but the simple plain text, and for that we are going to create a dispatch request function, and in here we are going to pass the request as the argument, and we are simply going to return the response hello world. Now with the use of this dispatch request, we are going to send the response, and we are going to use the response, which is nothing but from Werkzeug.wrappers import request and response, and we are going to pass this simple plain text. Now the next thing we are going to do is create an WSGI app, and for that create a function. You can name it anything. I'm gonna name it WSGI app. In here we are going to pass the two argument, as of course we used before. This is the same as before. In here environment and the start response. As you know, before we used this as the first hello world program, but this was the WSGI application, and in here this is the same as that particular applications. you can just pass the request equal to request in1. You can pass the in1, which is nothing but the argument, and you can use this request, which is nothing but the from workzeug.wrappers import request and response, and simply just pass the in1, which is nothing but the argument, and response equal to self.dispatch request, which is nothing but this response. We created this request in here, but if you don't wanna create this function, you can directly send this request from here. But this is the good habit to create another function. This is the same as the hello world which we just created. Now simply just response return the invar and the start response, which is nothing but this response. And the final thing we are going to do is create a last function, which is nothing but the def call. Now if you don't know what is this call, underscore call means, it will call at the end. It means we are going to pass the invar and the start response, and we are simply going to return this WSGI application, and we are just simply going to pass the invar and the start response from here. Okay, so in here we created the 4 important functions. The first one is init, which will the initialize. Okay, now that we created our AIOC first class to create an server and send the request, let's create an app to specify the static and templates and the server path. And for that, simply create an function. Just write any function name you want in here. I'm gonna name it create app. It will take 3 positional argument, which is nothing but the redis host, but we are going to pass the default, which is nothing but the local host, Reddit port, which is default nothing but the 6379. You can change it to 8000, and with static equal to true means static equal to true. It means it will use this static folder. Yes. Now in here app equal to AIOC first, which is nothing but I just created an object for this AIOC first class, and we have to pass the Reddit port and Reddit host as the list. As you can see in here, we are passing, as you can see, this configuration and the Reddit host and Reddit port, which is nothing but the initialize constructor. So obviously we have to pass the AIOC first, Reddit host and Reddit post. You can name it anything, but in here you can see we are passing the Reddit port and Reddit host equal to default, which is nothing but the local host. As you can see 127.0.0 and Reddit port equal to 8000, which is nothing but the default, but you can change it using this create app function. And if static means if you got any static data, just write app.wsgi equal to share data middleware. It means we are using this share data middleware, to share this static data, and for that use the share data middleware as the app.wsgi app, which is nothing but the this app object dot this WSGI app, and we are going to pass the static equal to os.path.join os.path.directory, which is nothing but the file static. In a simple way we are connecting this static, and in a simple way we are returning this app, which is nothing but the object of this AIOC first. As you can see, app equal to AIOC first. Lastly, we can add a piece of code that will start a local development server with automatic code reloading and debugger. In a simple way, let's create a main method to start this server, and for that you can directly use the if main name equal to main. It means this code run when we call the main function, or this code will run when we want to create an main method. So it means this is our main section. We are going to start the server from here. So let's begin. As you can see, we just created the if name equal to main. If you don't know what this means, you can check out the Python core documentation. Official Python core documentation link is in the description. And in here we are creating the object for create app. In here, as you can see, we are going to use this create app to start this server, not this AIOC first, because we already create an object for app equal to AIOC first. So we don't wanna use this. We are going to use this create app, and we can pass the customized local host and the port using this app. As you can see, app equal to create app, which is nothing but this function, and run simple, which is nothing but the from workzeug.service import run server simple. It will start the simple server. For that, use just run simple, whatever your ID is, this is nothing but the local host ID, and this is nothing but the local host port. And then app, which app you wanna run, which is nothing but this create app function, and user debugger equal to true and user reloader equal to true. It means if you got any debugger it will show, and if you got any reloader it means if you got any changes in this data it will reload automatically. So that is it. In here I am going to change this 5000 to the 8000 because I want to run this server into 8000. So let's run this code. So simply just right click and run day 1. As you can see, restarting with start, it means it's starting, and as you can see debugger is activated and debugger pin is 283.218 and 163, and at the final after 20 or 30 minutes our server is running at this port localhost running on 127.0.0.1 gem 8000. So let's see this page. As you can see, it's reloading on 127.0.0.1 gem 8000. Let it reload. It will take some time, depend on your server. As you can see, we got the hello world. So that is it for today's guys. If you don't wanna miss the next part, which is gonna be very important, subscribe this YouTube channel. Hit on the bell icon so you'll never miss my latest video. See you guys in the next video. Till then, just go.